Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thought Soup. This is episode number 9. Time flies. Today I'm going to talk about depression. Now, a lot of people in our Western cultures suffer from depression. We even have now a clinical depression, meaning that the official science or medicine, the body of medicine, has acknowledged that sometimes we feel like shit. Thank you for that official title, clinical depression. Very nice. So, although it affects a lot of people, I think it's usually a sign of a rich society or a privileged one. Because when you're in survival, well, you just don't have the time, the luxury to be depressed. You have to survive quite literally. You may have to get water and get food because you don't have any. So you don't have time to sit there and be depressed. But in our rich societies, and even our poor are much richer than, say, some people who live in very desolate places. So that's why I'm referring to this as rich countries. Usually we can say that depression is associated with the past. It's a past focus, so to speak. Meaning your mind is focused on the past. You're depressed about you not being able to do what it is you tried to do in the past. You're dissatisfied with an outcome that happened. You're grieving because you lost somebody very dear to you that just died. So it's usually associated with the past. You're not depressed about the future because that would be, usually it's not the future. Future is more with anxiety, and we'll talk about that in another video. So when our attention is focused on the past, then we have regrets, and then we can start being depressed about our present situation. What about, the scientific view? Usually what happens is, I won't say scientific because now I feel science is all but scientific because it is driven by money. It is driven by economic interests. So what used to be science, meaning endless curiosity, meaning trials without bias, has just become basically marketing. So what happens today is when we go and see the medical establishments for depression, usually they just give us some pills. Kill the pain and relocate. We love drugs. Well, especially pharmaceutical companies love selling those. So it doesn't ever solve anything. We just we're given drugs, or we go to a psychologist and we get to talk about our past. Why are we depressed, etc., etc. I think there's a very elemental aspect that's always overlooked, and it's food. Now, there's some very clear scientific research recently done on food and all about microbiome and the importance, the fundamental importance of our physical well-being, how that affects our mental well-being. So just by changing the food we eat, our outlook on life changes. Our depression can disappear or lessen. Just look at the very famous Super Size Me and how this dude went 2 months eating just junk food every day, 3 times a day, and he got depressed, severely depressed. It took him 2 years to get back after just 2 months of eating absolute poison every day. He got depressed because the sugar levels go up and all that jazz. So I'm not a doctor, I'm not here to talk about this, but I do think that today in our modern society, we eat like crap. Most of us do. Well, I don't. I eat actually very well, but most humans today eat very, very badly. And so that affects the microbiome, that affects our moods, etc., etc. So the first thing I think we have to take a look at is the quality and the quantity of food that we ingest. That's very, very important. Another thing I'd like to say about depression is that, like all emotions, it becomes a habit. For example, we all know somebody that's constantly a little bit angry, a little bit edgy. It's his or her temperament. We become attached and we've become habitual with this response of anger. Or some people are depressed. It also becomes a habit. Depression is also quite a nice, in some way, habit to have, because it does bring us into ourselves, doesn't it? It's not an opening. It's not an expenditure, towards the outside. It's more of a closing in on ourselves, and it's a very cozy, warm, somehow sadness that can degenerate, of course, all the way to suicide. Of course, suicide is not a happy thing. If you kill yourself, you're not happy, obviously. But I don't think it's tragic in itself, in the sense that if you want to kill yourself, you're an adult, grown adult, go ahead. It doesn't matter at all. It matters to the people who love you. But it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It really doesn't. That's reality. We don't like to hear that, but it's the truth. So if people want to kill themselves, I think it's sad. And I think it's also a lack of imagination, because it means you have found no solution to what you perceive as your problems. So you kill yourself. Well, that's one solution, but you'll probably just come back and try again. So, like the Chinese like to say, there's always at least 7 solutions to each problem. So if one kills themselves because of depression, well, certainly it's because they probably haven't been helped in the right way, haven't been directed in a certain direction. And some people just find life unbearable. But being free is also being able to end one's life. That's part of being free. I don't think it's a good thing, though. I think there's definitely other solutions. Also, we can think of depression as a complete non-acceptance of what is or what has been. That's very common. We never accept what is. Not sure why that is. It's very strange. So we don't accept it, we fight it, we get depressed over it, and this is so sad, and we just keep in there, and it's just like a lot of mental, noise, I suppose. And I'm not sure, I personally don't, I understand it intellectually, but I don't understand it in my everyday life, because it's not something, I've never been prone personally to depression, and even if I do have moments like everybody else of emotions that are maybe depressed, it's just another emotion that flows through, in the seconds that we live. And it's fine. So it's not an actual real problem for me. It becomes a problem again when I talked about the ego in the last videos. Again, it's because we identify completely with our thoughts. We think our thoughts are real. We think they're the truth, and we think that we are the thoughts. That's a very, very big misconception. It's an error. It's an illusion. It's not true at all. It's not true. It's just not the reality. It's just the reality we live, but it doesn't mean it's true. So are there solutions? Yes, there are. I would say the first thing, absolutely, is start eating good, wholesome foods. Stop stuffing yourself with junk. Eat organic. Eat, if you can, proportionally with meats and vegetables, lots of veggies. Just eat well. Stop all the sugars. Eat well. I cannot stress that enough. You need to eat well. You eat 3 times a day. If you eat junk, you're filling yourself up 3 times a day with junk. And if you take the medicines from the pharmaceutical companies, well, what happens? It's poison with side effects. Wonderful. Just start eating well. That's, I think, the fundamental thing that needs to absolutely be done. The second thing is, if you can, stop being so self-centered. Because depression is centered around my story and how sad my story is. That's what depression is, fundamentally. It's only about me, me, me. How poor me. I have a terrible life. My life is worse than yours. You have no idea how bad my life is compared to yours. That's what depression is, fundamentally. Stop being so self-centered. How do I do that? Well, help others. You'll find lots of people who are much, much worse off than you are. And if you can't find those people, you haven't looked hard enough. Help animals. Lots of animals need help. They get hit by cars. If you don't like humans, help animals. Stop thinking about yourself. Think of others. And you will start taking a back seat with all your problems, and you'll start realizing, hey, my problems are not so important. And your mind will focus on something else. You'll feel better. Stop being so self-centered. Think of others. You'll feel much, much better. And the last thing, of course, which I can never stress enough, is wake up. Wake up. Be aware of your own thoughts. Be aware of your thoughts, the thoughts that come through this incessant radio that you have in your brain. Start paying attention, looking at them. You don't need to believe all your thoughts. They're not true. 99% of them are just absolute junk. Stop believing all your thoughts. So eat well. Stop being so self-centered. You are not the center of the universe. You are the universe. You just don't know it. So relax. Breathe in. Breathe out. It's all going to be okay. And don't believe all your thoughts. Do those 3 things, and I'm sure you'll get better. It's not going to be easy, but you will get better. You're not that important. Relax. That's it for today. It was a bit long, but I thought depression was an important topic. And we'll see you next week. As usual, I forget what it is I planned on talking about next week, so let me tell you quickly. Next week, we'll talk about anxiety, which is the reverse of depression. Depression would be like the past, anxiety, the future. So, see you next week. See you next Friday. Have a good week. Bye.